I'm assuming the first thing you need to do if you want to have your own Spitfire, first you need a house on the airport. You need a hangar like this. And you can see you just taxi right out here. How cool is this? You just taxi right out. And of course Spitfires are made to take off on the ground. Look at this. You got your own entry ramp. How cool is that? Is that cool or what? Wow, unbelievable. Not many people I know have this kind of stuff in their backyard. This is really cool. Yeah, we could see now if I had it, we'd cut that tree down and make a 70-foot. Well, that's the only thing missing is your own flying circle.
I'm sorry?
Can you imagine this with all your models hanging up on a wall and out here a 70-foot flying circle?
Yeah.
Whoa, man, that's, and your model railroad off in the corner there. Oh.
I never saw any picture of any Spits where I saw the guns mounted like this.
The ones that I modeled, I made those guns.
Did you?
Yeah, they unscrew out on two 440. Seafire has those. No. This is cool, and when they shoot the gun, they just blow the tape off. There's guns in here, and it's just tape.
Really?
Yep. Those exhausts got me. They're really cool.
Yeah.
That's a really nice.
Yep. Beautiful job. And you can even see how they're made.
Yeah, exactly. The landing gear details. I know Joe's going to be in. Joe'll be playing this over and over again. You do up the gear legs, the doors.
That's the first time I've seen a Spit. See what the sheet metal on the inside edge of the door looks like.
Mm-hmm. Look inside those radiators. There's some detailing inside those radiators, and they got the dump doors in the back. Yeah, that is one very impressive. I don't think the ones I've even seen, even the one in the Dayton Museum, is not as clean as this one. This one is clean beyond clean. This is like Testarossa clean. Now Zambelli is going to have something very similar to this down in South Carolina. He's already bought the property, and have his airplane, have his Piper come right in.
Is that right?
Have his own flying field. When you live on an airport, it's hard for people to complain about aeroplane noise, I guess.
True.
They have an air-conditioned office in here. Let's see what they got going on. What a place. I could spend a week here.
I would have flown it for you guys if I'd have had the thing where I could fly it, but obviously I can't.
Fred, we've got a flap out. The flap actuator, the ears broke off on it, so we have to have. Of course, it's not available anymore. So
Oh, yeah.
Especially.
Have to have a
Fabricated.
machine shop make it.
And this is the flap that went to.
This is the flap. The actuator sits right here, and that's what broke. The ears broke off of it, and it goes right here, and it's bolted on.
So
Surprisingly small flap.
It's a 90-degree flap, and it's all it's supposed to do is duck the nose. It's not a lift flap. It's a pure drag flap, but I'll guarantee you that thing isn't any fun to land with the flaps up. I've only done it one time, and I ain't doing it again. Because I mean, you're flying along like this, you can't get your speeds right because this thing is very critical on speed, and particularly coming in here because we only have, we have a high line on one end of the runway, and we only have fence to fence 3,000 feet. So with the high line, we have the runway offset where you only have 2,800 feet. And so you have to hold your speeds exactly right in this airplane in order to get it on here. But the only time I've ever landed it without flaps, I went over to Galveston and landed on the
Smart
long
man.
runway.
long runway.
But if you're interested at all, I've got every kind of book known to man on this thing. This basically, let's see, that's the Dutch stuff. Let's see. I prepared a book on this thing for Oshkosh somewhere. I don't know what I did with it. It might be in the other room.
You go to shows with this?
Huh?
This like at Oshkosh they have
Yeah.
classes of restoration? And
Yeah. And this basically shows getting it, unloading it,
Oh,
and this is corrosion.
oh, God.
Look at the corrosion on this. I'm not talking about corrosion.
Yeah, talk about that.
See,
Severe
this is corrosion.
We
And
remade all that.
and so this is when you're taking apart. This is a part of rib 1, and what you're looking at is an extrusion. All the extrusions are bad because of the way they heat treated the extrusions back in those days. They did a lousy job. They didn't expect them to last very long.
No.
And so this here, it shows the jig that we built for the wings. I don't know if we get some good pictures of the jig, but the jig was pretty good size, as you can see. And you're looking at it, there's the wing, it's in the jig, and we're rebuilding each one of the section. It lent itself to rebuilding in sections. And for instance, this is the wheel well section. This right here, we're rebuilding the area right under the radiators, and we could take these out. And what we did is we worked our way through all of these sections, jigging each one of them as we went. Because, you know, of course, this thing was made specifically for the wing. And luckily the wings were not damaged so that we could use them as a jig. And so we used them as a jig, and we put the whole top on there. Once we got that done, we took it all off, and then we rebuilt the D section, which is the bottom part. And we were able to salvage many of the ribs in the D section, and in fact salvage the D section, which is 80 thousandths thick.
Wow.
And here, you know, we're going back in with the D section frames. You can see them all. We've got where we're putting them.
Talk about a labor of love.
This shows what just typical. This is the original Aileron bell crank, and if you look at it, you can see that's corrosion. And I mean, it was corroded, intergranular type stuff. It's nothing but a pattern, and so this is what we made.
Well, see, Redmond's a self-taught master craftsman on this.
Now, what about? Can I ask you a silly question? Because I've done a little research on Spitfires. There's places in England that do pretty much what you've done on a bigger scale, or they do.
There are two. There's a company called Historic Flying that does the system installation, and they don't build them up. But what they do is they put in all the systems, and they put in the engines and everything like that. There's a company called Airframe Assemblies that basically will build you a new one, and they helped me a great deal.
Okay. There's a lot of camaraderie in this, just like there is in modeling, where one guy helps the other guy, and.
Well, and I bought a number of parts from Airframe Assemblies, particularly parts that were machined parts. Most of the stuff that wasn't machined we made ourselves, but the machined parts.
What does one have to do to quote unquote salvage an extrusion?
You don't salvage them.
Use it for a pattern.
You just use it for a pattern.
And then
It
cut it
corrodes
out of
from
raw
inside.
stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
we
No, when you said intergranular.
Yeah.
we got the extrusion material from England, and we could buy it in 20-foot lengths, and it was modern extrusion material made with the same extrusion dies as they used back in England.
Okay.
And I got it from Airframe Assemblies, and then we would cut it, and you know, we've got stretchers and shrinkers and stuff over there, so that we would be able to shrink it or stretch it to the old pattern.
Right.
And then we put the ribs together, and things like this. This is the seat when we started rebuilding it, and
Flap handle?
That's the seat adjuster.
Oh, okay.
Up and down, and it was so corroded underneath, and these frames here were bent, so we had to make them. But that's what it looked like when we finished. Here we're going into another wing. You can see now how it is in sections. This again is a wheel well section. This is the trailing edge section on the left wing. This shows this is the frame that is right outside here, and it I took a picture of it because it had an inspection plate on it, and I put all the plates back on, or where they were so screwed up that I couldn't salvage them. I just had new ones made. But this is rib 1. Rib 1 on this aircraft has a little over 350 pieces. Yes, I mean it's this is a metal. This is a metal airplane that should have been a wood airplane. It's a wood airplane made out of metal. Basically this is the cannon ammo bay, which we ultimately made into fuel cells. And this is your spar. Here we're building it up with the new spars. And here we're still, this is the D section again. Here's with everything out of it. And then this is the spar after we finished it and put it into the D section. And you know, it's just a lot of little projects.
Just a lot of work.
And you can see here it's in the jig. You can see how it's set in the jig, and how we literally, once we got the D section finished, we had all of these frames done, and we put it together just like that in a day, because it's all bolted together. You just slip it in and bolt it in, put bushings and bolts in, and but getting to that point is a pain in the butt. Then of course here we're reskinning it. The problem with the skin, the reason it looks like it's got the measles, is that that Aileron tank and that etch tank is a 55-gallon drum, and you can't get it all the way in the damn thing. So you end up turning it over, and so it ends up.
the same with a 5-gallon bucket.
It ended up looking like a speckled trout. And this is the fuselage. Now, a lot of the fuselage salvaged. We didn't salvage any of the exterior skins just because the skins were damaged. You cannot straighten out a damaged skin. I mean, I can take a wheel and do a lot of things, but there he is. What's happening? What we're doing is we're taking a wire brush and cleaning the rivet lines so we can drill them off. You have to drill out every rivet in a Spitfire. Spitfire used a magnesium rivet, and so you have to remove a little over 250,000 rivets. After a while, you get pretty good at drilling a rivet.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
and here we're going back together.
You've drilled a few in your time.
Oh, I've drilled a few.
What it was funny. We could build a relatively simple jig for the fuselage, because the way it was built, these things split in the middle, and so we could rebuild one piece, a little section, put it in, and then go to the opposite side and rebuild that section. And so we just kind of walked down. You can see here's the first section that we did. Here's a section that we're getting ready to skin and paint. And unfortunately, you've got all these damn parts, and so I used a lot of tags trying
What kind
to.
of paint do you use?
Well, it's a polyurethane paint. We used.
They don't use zinc chromate anymore, right?
Well, it's zinc chromate looking, but it doesn't have the zinc in it anymore. You can use zinc chromate. The Brits used a paint that they call Spitfire green, and it's not quite as shiny as the inside of my airplane. It's a primer, and we had it duplicated, and but we made it a little shinier so it doesn't get so dirty, and you can wash it out with goddamn Varsol gun. It's just, you know, the purists criticized greatly, but very frankly,
They never have to clean it.
they don't have to clean it.
Well, you can't clean flat paint. You cannot-
It's too porous.
Yeah.
It just
You
soaks in. Everything soaks into it, and it looks
you just
like hell.
can't clean it, and it's
Yeah. And so, you know, as you can see, we just kind of walked up the front. We had to remake this frame almost entirely, and this frame almost entirely. This one here was really a bitch, and it's the one that the seat attaches to. And all of these aircraft are hand built, so you can't take parts off of one and put them on another. And for instance, the seat had to be fitted to the frame, and it only fits that frame. But here we're getting.
Is that Russell?
Yeah, it's Russell. He's holding the seat up for me.
How much of the plane was like that? Was quite a bit of the plane handmade, that everyone was unique, or?
Everyone was unique. in
Okay, there was
Spitfire.
no like a shelf with 2,000 seats and they just bolted them in, or?
Well, they had dispersal sites all over England because of the bombing, and somebody'd make rib 1 over here, and somebody'd make rib 2 over here, and when we took the first skins off of the wing, it had in it what the Brits call packers, we call shims, and it must have had 200 or 300 shims to make the thing fit. And there were shims just falling all over the floor. We had no idea where they went. And so what we did is we jigged each rib. We took strings and we left the end rib on and left this one, and then struck strings and jigged it as we went. So we only have one shim in this whole damn 2 wings. But we made over parts that were sound from the standpoint of corrosion, just because they were so poorly made. This airplane, they estimated the life of a Spitfire when this airplane was made at 25 hours of flying. And so you're talking about,
Yeah, it's disposable item.
They needed numbers of them in a big hurry.
they needed them, and it took them 33,000 man-hours to build one.
Oh,
And
geez.
the Germans were able to build an ME-109 using Polish slave labor, and they got it down to 6,500 man-hours finally. So the Brits took 5 times longer to build an airplane than a Spit than the Germans used on an ME-109, but the Brits had a lot of labor. They just had an incredible amount of labor that was wasn't skilled, but it was semi-skilled, because they were a country of little shops and shopkeepers, and so they were used to working with their hands. They had some knowledge of tools, much different
It
than.
was like the Mosquito. It worked out really well because they had furniture makers.
Right.
And it's all
the
wood.
airplane.
Yeah,
Make
basically all wood.
airplane.
Here's just, and this, the funny thing about the tail surfaces on this airplane is a transition airplane. The Brits invented the pop rivet, and believe me, it's a hell of a good rivet. And the ones that we used on this, and we used the pops where they used the pops, we used the Monel rivet instead of the aluminum rivet that they used, and they're hell for stout. I mean, they're so strong. And
Saw a few of those.
but the way they built this thing before they had the pop rivet is they would rivet on the top skin, and then they have these wood strips, and they would take a number 3 wood screw, little tiny wood screw on 1-inch spacing, and they would screw the bottom skin to these little wood strips, and that's the way you made the tail surfaces on this airplane. If you go out there and look, it's all screws underneath. Now that when the stabilizer was made, when the vertical fin was made, It was made in some other place, and they were modern. They used the pot rivet, and so, but the earlier Mark 9s, most of the Mark 9s that were made after maybe the middle of 1944, they were all popped. They didn't use any of the little bitty sheet metal screws. But you sit there with a 16th drill, and you have your skin on. You drill through the hole into your mahogany strip, and then you take and you dip it in a little bit of glue, put it in there, and screw it in. The glue acts as a lubricant, and it makes it much easier to screw into the thing. Kind of like model building again.
A technique not foreign to us.
Where on earth did you get the gauges and everything else? How did you manage to find all of these?
Well, I found a lot of it. When I bought this project, I bought all his spare parts too, and he bought the guy that I bought the project from was a man by the name of Ruud Krens. He was a Dutchman. MK723. Mine's the MK959, and then he wrecked it, and now I'm using MK723 parts. So.
He's your spare parts supplier.
But here's this is the fabric control surfaces are alike, but they double cover.
Yeah, I know the process. I've never done it.
And
Two layers of seeking out, or what?
We actually used polyfiber, but it's the same stuff.
Similar.
Yeah, and I'm no fabric. I've done one J3 Cubman my entire life, and Bob Gutman is a real. He's a fabric genius. Huh?
Was the original
Linen, yes. And
When you double cover now, do you do anything before applying the fabric to bond the two fabrics together, or is it done one layer at a time?
it's done one layer at a time.
It's all stitched.
It's stitched.
All dope.
And you really can't tell it. I mean, hell, you can't tell it's two
I
layers.
didn't see any stitches, that's why I asked.
Well, the stitches are covered with tape. They're taped. In other words, you stitch them and then you put tape on the top of them. But these are, a lot of this stuff I got when I bought the project. He had boxes and boxes of parts, and that was helpful.
Wow.
All these instruments came with the project. I mean, this is kind of interesting. I had a brand new, old gun camera, and but I didn't have the mount.
The leading edge of the wing right here.
Yeah, I didn't have the mount. I had everything. Well, I borrowed this from the RAF, from the Battle of Britain Memorial flight that came out of one of their old wrecks. And that's the original bracket. And this is the one we made and put the gun camera in.
You copied it.
It copied it, put the gun camera in, and the gun camera sits in that wing, and it looks through
I'm
that
surprised they
little hole.
lent it to you.
They
cooperated.
Well, they really were nice. At first, they were kind of scally that there was a Spitfire being rebuilt in the United States. This was the first one that had ever been rebuilt from the ground up in the United States. Here we're building a wheel branch. That looks easy. That's the hardest damn thing to make.
And then after a while, they were
Less
sorry
knows.
for them. They must have once they found out you were serious about the project, they're doing a good job.
And I would have, see, this airplane was flown by a number of people that belong to the Spitfire Society, and taking all these pictures and taking them back to England and showing them, various things. But this is when we're putting the wings on, and I used. See that damn digital level there?
Yeah.
That's a diabolical son of a bitch.
Sure.
Because I'll guarantee you, This wing dihedral is 6 degrees plus or minus a half a degree. So you can have 1 degree difference. This son of a bitch, we got this thing and we got it absolutely on the money, 6 degrees with that digital level in the morning. The day would get hot and the goddamn wings would try to straighten out and they would change their degree about, you watch it, and instead of having 6 degrees you'd have 6.3 degrees, or you'd have 5.6 degrees. And if the temperature was exactly the same the next morning and the weather conditions were exactly the same as when you set the dadgum thing to 6 degrees, it'd be 6 degrees.
That's when you said, well, plus or minus 1.
We said,
That's
time to drill that son of a bitch.
That's good enough.
Bolt that puppy home.
Bolt that puppy
than
in
the
there.
original one.
Oh, no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
You don't know how interested Joe and I are in this stuff.
You
You have
tap it.
no idea.
Well, I guarantee you, I was tapping that sucker in, and the head came off my hammer. Well, I told Gutman, I said, Gutman, go get me another hammer,
No,
quick.
you gotta start all
Well,
over
Gutman can't run like a rabbit. I mean, he shuffled on into here and grabbed me another hammer, and by the time he got back,
again. Too late.
that son of a gun was almost stuck. I barely got it in. I mean, I didn't think I was going to get it in.
That would have been entertaining.
Well, you'd have had to drill
Drill
it.
it out.
You'd had to drill it out and collapse the walls, pull it out.
I'm interested in, it's got invasion stripes on it. Did it come out of the factory that way, or did you just paint it with the invasion stripes?
No. I got a picture
That's
of
the
it.
way it came out?
No, it was much before. Let's see, I got the picture. These are just some letters about the.
Stripes on our airplane.
You include me in on any invasion stripe program.
Yes, sir.
Every one of mine has,
This is
even my Typhoon.
This is Andre Rose who flew it. This is a watercolor that he painted. He's got it at home. It's a great big thing, about like that, and that he says is MK959. And Andre's the sole survivor. Andre wrote me his letter in French, so I had to translate it because he was a Frenchman. And he says, for your information, among the 5 pilots, I'm the sole survivor. And then here he is today.
Wow.
And this is my airplane in June of 1944 with the invasion stripes painted. If you look in the invasion records, they sent them out the night before with buckets of whitewash and black paint. And they stayed out there till the wee hours of the morning, made the pilots paint them. And the pilots were out there painting the damn things. And
They didn't have anything to go by, just a tech order,
that said they got to be so wide and there got to be so many of them.
and they had different interpretations. That's why you have so many different stripes.
And so if you look at how rough it was, where they
Oh,
painted
yeah, look at
around
the roundels. Oh, my
the
goodness.
roundel. I mean, it was just rough.
No airbrush, right?
No airbrush.
No ink lines.
No airbrushing.
No masking tape
No
either.
masking.
No windy airbrushing.
No windy video back
Yeah,
then.
this is Andre's wife, who's English, and of course this is me and Andre, and this is my wife. And then this is
Can I see that one again?
yeah, this was in
It's
France.
Andre.
Is that a squadron marking that?
Yes, this is the half Stork Squadron, which was the most famous of the French squadrons during World War I. It had Georges, Germeyer, and all of the French aces were in half Storks, and so this was a reincarnation of the half Stork Squadron, and that's why the Stork was painted on the side, and these are just some pictures of the Stork's emblem. This is the Stork on a Mirage today. The half Stork Squadron is still surviving. And these are some of the things that I had.
The original artwork.
Yeah, this is what Andre's an artist, and so he drew one for me. But ultimately, and he drew one for me, and we made a thing that we could put on the airplane. But ultimately, I found the sister ship to my Spitfire. It had crashed 4 days before. It crashed on the 9th of June in France during the Normandy invasion, and the French had cut the
Squadron
Stork,
mark out. Wow.
and it was in the French Museum in Beaujolais.
Wow.
And so they allowed a friend of mine who is a museum curator, a guy by the name of Harry Vandermeer, to make a tracing of it. And,
Wow.
and here's the thing, and he made a tracing, and that's what we used to put.
And so it's
the-
really accurate,
That's
yeah.
great.
Isn't that something?
That's
Whoa.
amazing.
And yeah, this shows the K that's on the front of the cowling.
Right.
They told me what it was like, but this was the only picture I got of it. And Lambert is still alive, and this is his airplane.
What's the
And,
significance of the letter?
say my airplane was K, somebody else's airplane may have been L, and so pilots flew a number of different airplanes. So
Okay.
because the missions on these airplanes were very short, hour and 15 minutes, because they didn't hold any gas.
Okay.
And so they'd run across the channel, shoot up everything, and come back. When they'd come back, another pilot would jump in the airplane and they'd take it back over again. So they had them painted where they would line them up, and they'd say, "John, you're assigned K," and the K would be
So
on the
easily
front of the
recognizable
airplane,
Oh, okay,
so it would
right,
be
right.
recognized. And if you look on the side of my airplane, it says 5AK. 5A is the 329 Squadron identification number. K is the airplane identification
Okay,
number.
yeah.
So they could fly up beside an airplane and they could tell his squadron, and they could tell
Wow.
what airplane he was in. And then if you go back and you look through the combat records, that's the way they put them in squadrons. And you'll see sometimes they'll have the letters. They'll have instead of having MK959, they'll have K and A and
Oh,
B
okay,
and
yeah.
D as the squadron.
I never knew the significance of that. I had seen that before.
These were later. The Brits in early July, in July the 2nd or 3rd, they had a tech order come out to take the invasion stripes off the top of the wings and the top of the fuselage because they could not camouflage the aircraft. They put the aircraft under a bunch of trees,
And there's the invasion stripes.
and they cover them up with stuff, and they
Oh,
could still
okay.
see the invasion stripes. So the Brits had the invasion stripes removed from the top of the wings and the top of the fuselage, and this is what resulted. Now this is Lambert's airplane again, 5A being the squadron designation, 329 and L been his. This was actually his private airplane because he was the squadron leader at this time.
I never knew, because I had seen a lot of the invasion stripes only on the bottom, and I said, well,
Yeah.
what was that all about? Yeah, after the invasion, who needs the stripes? That's,
Well, but they.
some of Al's Mustangs only have the thing on the...
On the bottom.
Now, did you know that? That's news to me.
This
Well, I didn't know that history.
this is a book that the Dutch Museum prepared for me. These are plates that I removed during rebuilds that identify the airplane. But basically, this is my airplane when it was flown in the Polish 6th Patriot Squadron. That's 302 Squadron.
When they Polish.
It started out in Poles, then it went to the French, and then it went to 165 Squadron, which was basically a Kiwi squadron.
It's Polish. That's what
It started out Polish, then went to French, and then went to
Your brother's back there, Wendy.
and then went to
I'll tell you something, go to Warsaw and you'll see how much documentation they have. Yeah.
This is the movement card, and this is when it was damaged, and it was damaged on the 28th of December on a raid on Cologne, and the guy who was flying it, I visited him. He lives on the Isle of Man, and I'm trying to remember his name now. I've just drawn a blank. But anyhow, he had to set it down, couldn't get the gear down, and he set it down and it was pretty badly damaged. They had done a lot of
This
work
airplane.
on this airplane, and they put it back in shape, put a new engine in it, and then in 1946 sold it to the Dutch. But this just kind of goes through. This is like that book there, except it just summarizes the various.
I'm curious about something. You know, the United States sold 51s for just nearly nothing if you could fly them all, you know.
Yeah.
What did this airplane sell to the Dutch for?
They bought 25 of them for 106,000 pounds. Maybe at that
Back then,
time.
about $3.50 to the pound.
Okay, so
Yeah.
say $300,000 for 25 airplanes, $10,000 a piece. But they had all purportedly been rebuilt with new engines and were in great shape. But when I took the tail apart, there was a bullet hole through the goddamn spar. And they had put a patch on the top and a patch on the bottom, but they never patched the hole in the spar.
So the spar is not doing anything.
Bill, was that one of your repairs? One of yours? That's good enough
My
repair.
grandfather.
My dad.
These are some pictures. This is when it was at Eindhoven in the late 1950s, before it was put on a post. This here was kind of an interesting scenario with the Dutch side of the air base from the British side, and the British demanded the Spit to put out in front of their officers' club. Well, the Dutch didn't want to give it to them, and I've got just correspondence out the butt. Finally, the Minister of Defense of the Netherlands said, give them the airplane. So they gave them the airplane to put out in front of their officers' club. Well, one night, the Dutch got drunk, and they took a crane, and they went over and they picked the damn airplane up. This is one of the original pictures. Picked the airplane up with a crane and carted it back across to their side. Well, you've never seen so damn many paper. It's a paper nightmare. I mean, Latin back and forth. And finally, they had to give the airplane back to the Brits. So when the Brits left Eindhoven, they had a changing of the guard, and they gave the base totally back to the Dutch. And with it, they gave my airplane back. And
Oh man, is that a story?
and this is
Wow.
my airplane right here, and these are the Brits, and these are the Brits, and these are the Dutch. And this is the changing of the guard where they gave the airplane back.
And it was your airplane.
That's
My airplane.
incredible.
And this is the guy he's come over here and visited, Jan Van Arkel, and he flew Spitfires during World War II, and he's the one that saved the airplane. And this is where it was, on a post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and this
Yeah, it's
is
called a gate guard.
We got
and
different
this
wingtips.
And the Dutch took the wingtips off because it increases the rate of roll of the airplane. They used them for low-level flying. If you look at the original pictures of this airplane,
With the wingtips, it rolls quicker.
without the wingtips, it rolls quicker.
Okay.
And if you look at the original pictures of the airplane back in 1946, when they first gave the airplanes to the Dutch. There's a picture of it. Here's a picture of it. The Dutch. This is a long picture. These are some of the first pictures of the airplanes right after in 1946 and 47.
Without the tips.
Without the tips, and this is when they took them off. I have some of the maintenance records, and took them off. The Dutch took them off in England.
Why would you have the tips on it if it rolls better with them off?
pretty high.
Well, yeah, I don't know that you could get it up that
Yeah.
high, but I mean,
It's the same as a 727. That's its, see,
Really?
7, yeah.
and it's 40. That's 42,000 feet with no pressurization.
Ooh.
So
So you
you,
better be carrying some oxygen.
well, not only that,
And
you,
clothing.
you can barely blow the oxygen out because you know it's just you're having to force feed yourself with the
Right.
oxygen. You can't hardly breathe. And these are some pictures of it. This kind of shows the condition of the airplane back in. This was in about the 1980s when they were doing a lot of rebuild.
How long did it take you to rebuild this?
10 years.
Wow, that's not bad.
Yeah, but
Here's you know you can see what it was.
That's just
That's not bad.
mind-boggling.
yeah, but you know, long after we're gone, Rayburn, that airplane will be there, and people will be able to look at it.
That airplane will be there long
Yeah,
after we're gone.
yeah,
You can see these are the cannon bays. You can see how bad things were.
How many Spits are actually still surviving? About 50?
Oh, there's a
see
bunch
that
of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
See, this is the reduction gear, and you can see the size of the crankshaft. The crankshaft here, I made a propeller stand out of it. It's over on the other side.
oh,
Because you can buy these engines, you can buy the engines pretty dead. This gave me a fit. When the Dutch were doing a rebuild on the airplane to put it back on the post and it was corroded so bad and everything, they wanted to sandblast the elevators. Since the blasting machine wasn't big enough, they cut them in half. And so I had to make a new spar for the damn elevators. They cut that sucker just.
disappointment. pissed
Not
off.
only did they cut it in half, they cut a piece out of it about like that because they took the bell crank and somebody ran off with the bell crank. So it,
Tom Morris.
it was cut in half.
The Moon Brothers.
It was cut and they ran off with the bell crank. So I ended up having to have that spar made by Airframe Assemblies because I didn't have any. Documentation.
We're
where
gonna
I
get a jig
could
it
make
off. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
make it a jig and fit out.
Yeah, I mean,
Even a corroded one would have
Yeah.
worked.
Here's the paint. The paint
Yeah.
show looks like it's all masked off.
well, this is when. See, this was H-15 is what it was in Dutch service, and they were painting it in the H-15 colors to put it back on the post. And these are pictures of it in its later time. And it shows how it was on the post. That's the barracks for the Royal Dutch Air Force Academy there. And then
What did they replace it with? Or did they?
you'll see. It's the damnedest thing you ever saw in your life. It's one of the very few survivors of Operation Market's Garden, and so this is an article about it. That they had it in a show right before I bought it because it was one of the surviving Spitfires. There's only two that I'm aware of that flew in Operation Market's Garden that are still surviving, and this is the only flyer. This, believe it or not, you'll see here. Okay, this is right here is the plastic model that was used to replace my airplane. There's the plastic model, and that damn thing is so realistic.
How did they make that out of plastic?
Yeah, it's made out of plastic. Here it is right here, and
Full size.
full size. And here's the
Holy
here's the
mackerel.
factory where they made them.
Yeah, they just
Oh
lay
man.
it up a piece at a time.
Well, there's no internals or motor or anything. It's just a shell.
It's a shell.
Well, but it looks. You couldn't tell. I wouldn't know that's not the real plane.
And have the rivets and everything.
Yeah,
So
the rivets and
Oh,
everything.
man.
It's unbelievable.
they just molded off of that in sections.
And they have
glue
a
it up,
and they
mold
have
the
a
next part, then they glue it all together.
they have a
Oh.
structure inside it that's
Yeah, to hold it. Yeah. Like,
it's basically a tubing structure
Wow.
to hold everything in
little
place.
rods will come out to hold the panels.
And it's beautiful.
That's unbelievable. I'm finding that
And
unbelievable.
here they're taking my airplane down from the post, and this is this guy right here is Jack Von Egmond, who was the guy who worked for Rudy Krenz. This is Rude Krenz. He's the guy I bought it from right here, and this is Jack, and this is when they gave it over to Jack, and you know, this is the airplane. And there it is. This is when it was at the air show in '92, because it was one of the very, very few survivors of Operation Market Garden, which is their famous, you know, the bridge too far. If you remember the movie, it was to attack the Germans through the Ardennes, and they got their supply line so stretched out that the Germans just beat the shit out of them. They lost 75,000 troops.
Now, at the end of World War II, when it actually ended, how many Spitfires were there still?
I don't know. They made 22,000 of them during the entire production schedule.
I mean, did they have them like Mustangs where people were just buying them up and turning them into hot rods and stuff?
They were making. They were all so poor.
Yeah, the average Brit couldn't afford to buy the hubcap.
And they were tearing them up and melting them down and making pots and pans out of them. Here's the combat
Well,
history
it was a
of this
give back because they asked for people to melt, turning their pots and pans and melt down.
Okay.
Now it's give back time.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But here's while they have every scrap of paper that they've ever generated, they don't have any index. And so you have to hire a guy by the name, I hired an archivist who specialized in that period of World War II to find these records for me. And these are the operation logs for every combat mission that the airplane flew.
Ooh.
And I even have some of the debriefing notes in Polish that when they come back from a mission, they would debrief them. They would have an intelligence officer debrief them, and he would write this out in longhand. Well, when I was practicing law, we had offices in Warsaw, and so we had a secretary that spoke Polish and wrote Polish and was a translator for us. And so I gave it to her to translate. She couldn't translate it because the Polish language has changed so much in 60 years because of the Russian influence. She could not. So we had to send it to some professor at the University of Warsaw to get it translated because he was the only one that could read the damn thing. I mean, you know, just unbelievable.
But there's just no end to this. This is unbelievable.
Well, it goes on and on.
Unbelievable.
Wendy's Polish, you know, you should have been able to do that kind of
Huh?
Wendy's Polish, you should.
Well, you got the manual. I'll translate it for you right now. Kabasi, 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 kabasi.
Miles north, and the people spoke altogether different dialect.
Well, same with Brit.
They do in America too. Go to North Carolina and go to Jersey. You won't understand either one of them.
What?
What? That is an unbelievable story, man. I can't tell you. If you knew how much we were interested in Spitfires.
Oh, geez, so
I went to England, went to
He's got the full
Duxford,
spiel. He's
went
got
to Duxford, and we made a special arrangement. The guy was a modeler that let us in after hours, let us touch anything. We had run into the place. Of course, I got videotape of it all, and I came home and built 6 Spitfires. I mean, that's what happened.
Well, it is a good flying airplane. In the air, it's very pleasant to fly. It isn't very pleasant to land on concrete, but it is pleasant to fly.
Now, your exhaust manifolds, I have a funny story. You could verify it. When we were in the museum, I looked at them on the Mosquito, how they slant down and go back, because I was making a mold for them for my own model. And the guy said, during the war, if you walked out by the runway, you would trip on them. They were flying, the planes would come back from a mission, 2, 3 missing all the time. They'd land in the grass, hit people in the head, and I thought,
I check them every time I fly.
Okay, there's some truth to that then.
I had stainless steel ones made, and they're very expensive. And so as part of my pre-flight, I shake each one of them
Yeah.
to see, make sure that.
But you think there might be some truth to that? That they flew
hell, they were
off.
falling off all over everywhere. And on top of that, they were made out of carbon steel. They were not made out of stainless.
They would burn up.
And so they burn up pretty quick.
Oh
And
man, what an adventure!
But when you had the average life of an airplane is 25 hours, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it's an ARF. These are really ARFs.
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care.
It was a horror show.
I heard the
was
back of the
terrible.
Typhoons used to fall off in flight.
Well, they did early on. The
Yes.
test.
They had to put these straps
There was a
on.
strap, yeah.
Yeah, 4 of them. There's 4 straps that
Whoa.
go around that airplane.
That the pilots would be flying in a digest and just
What?
it'd be easy to
They didn't
bail
have
out
duct
now.
tape?
There's nothing back there.
But they lost quite a few pilots in
In
the
the
shakedown.
initial,
Yeah.
when they first put them into service,
Wow.
they had the tails fall off, and they made that change, and they put those straps on there, and then they later strengthened the tails of the Typhoon. The Typhoon turned out to be a damn effective, low-level aircraft, and they used it primarily for attacking tanks and infantry and things.
Yeah.
Just like our Thunderbolt. You know, that's basically what they used it for. But the Sabre engine,
But that engine was garbage.
oh man, they had all sorts of trouble with that engine.
Well, you look at how many parts, 2H banks. I mean, it was just.
And it was square. The
Yeah.
goddamn thing looks like a box. I mean, it don't look like an engine. It
roll the
looks like a
cylinders
box.
here, this way.
What
roll
did they?
down here.
How did they lay out the cylinders on
Oh.
that engine? It's
I don't
It was
know.
it was horizontally opposed this way and down
two
here.
and then geared.
I don't know. I've never seen that. I
I've
don't-
seen pictures of them, and
Gee.
and
I've got
they
a
look
couple.
like this goddamn. They look like this goddamn refrigerator.
Oh, that is a Napier Sabre. Wow.
They were a nightmare to work on.
What I enjoyed extensively was whenever I'd go to England, I've been there twice, and a friend of mine who's a modeler, we went and looked at the Lancaster that the guy taxis up and down the grass.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got the people revere the Spitfire, the Lancaster.
Oh, I know.
They revere it. I don't think the Americans revere the Thunderbolt. And I don't think, but that made me sad. No, that made me sad.
You know, my
All about it.
when they held the last reunion of 302 Squadron, which my airplane is the only surviving Spitfire of 302 Squadron, and I sent them videotapes, and I flew the damn thing around and had videotapes and everything. 'Cause all these old guys. One of the pilots is still alive. And,
From World War II?
From World War II that flew my
Whoa.
airplane. And,
Whoa.
and,
He must be in his 80s, right?
Yeah,
he's
he's
in
got to
it.
be John DeTavio.
Andre's 86, and I guess Nowarski.
It's an unbelievable story, isn't it? It's like
Nowarski
unbelievable.
must be at least 86 because he had been a pilot in the Polish army and then had escaped and had come to England in 1939 when Germany overran Poland.
Yeah, I
So-
was born in Britain during the war. I'm British. I
Wow.
was born
I
in
didn't know
Scotland.
that.
Yeah, I was born in
Scotland.
Scottish.
But
Wow.
but anyhow, it's been a pretty interesting
What an interesting adventure, though, to
study of history.
this
Oh, yeah.
is like the guy that's digging up the Titanic. I mean, to me, that's
Yeah.
you're going and get. And imagine if they could bring it up somehow, and that would be the only thing I could relate this to, a labor of love like this. Unbelievable.
They screwed this bottom skin on. Now this skin here is pop riveted. And
Okay, the rudder is pop riveted.
The rudder is pop riveted, and the bottom skin on the.
Oh, it's all little screws. Oh my God, they're all little screws.
Number 3 screw.
Jesus, look at this. See if I can get it.
This is my wife, Sunny. Hi, Sunny. Yeah, we got married we rented out the Lone Star Flight.
Real zealot.
Can you retell that story for the audience? I'm making a movie.
We got married at the Lone Star Flight Museum,
Okay.
and we had the B-25 on the planes were all in a half moon.
Right.
The B-25, the B-17 is our centerpiece, which we got married under the nose of. Then we had the Corsair, the P-38, and then the P-47 all in a half.
Wow. I'd like to get married in this guy's hangar. My wife might not go for that, but
Well, his dad called me to ask you guys.
We may be able to make arrangements here. Married under the Spitfire. Wow. We're here for a model plane tournament, and Bill brought us over here. I've never been on one of these aviation. Look at this. This is obviously the runway, right, Bill?
Yep. That's it.
This is the most interesting part. We're having a model championships this weekend.
Yeah, that's what the gentleman in the blue shirt I was talking to told
Yeah,
me.
come out and visit
And I
us.
said
Sure.
come out Saturday.
The models are in the back of the
Yeah, I saw
van.
that.
And